This is Bill Jones with recapturefederalism.com. It's been a while since I've been on. We had the holidays, and I had a terrible, terrible cold. One of the worst colds I've had. Not so much discomfort, but I had a lot of coughing and what have you. I had some difficulty doing some of my presentations. But while I was off, I made some decisions. And one of the decisions is I've been thinking about writing a book and doing something or a documentary for some time now. Been saying for years, I ought to write a book. Like a lot of people say that. It's not that easy. I'm better talking than I am writing. Some would argue I'm even good at that, but we'll leave that rest. I made a decision. I'm going to have a documentary series, an ongoing documentary series, exploratory, expose type. For any of you who've listened to me in the past, you know I don't shy away from confrontation, controversy. I'm telling it like it is. And the reason I do that, I've been anti-communist since 1960. There's a lot of Americans who've died fighting communism. 33,000 plus in Korea, killed by communists. 58,000 plus my brothers and sisters died in Southeast Asia. And we continue to fight against evil. Communism is part of that evil, a big part. It is the biggest threat to the United States. Followed pretty closely, I guess, at this point in time. But the violent Islamic cults that we have around the world, primarily in the Middle East, but they're all over, including the United States. I'll talk later about, in this episode, about Mr. Obama's associations. The title of this episode, Communist Obama, like father, like son. We'll get into that. Yeah, that's controversial, isn't it? That's why I source everything. But we're going to have a ongoing episodes. I don't even know if there'll be an end to it. About communism. Documentary series, mini documentaries. And this is the first in, might reprint or reproduce some of the presentations I've done in the past. I'm sure I'll take some of the stuff out of there and put them in other documentaries, mini documentary series. The title of the series, the documentary itself, American Communist Theocracy, with a subtitle, Treason, Sedition, and Subversion. That's right. And we'll get into this. Mr. Obama has associations. When he was in Chicago, a community organizer, by the way, that's a communist term, comes from the ideas, the guidelines of the Communist Party's 1921. On the south side of Chicago, in fact, where his residence is at, is the neighborhood I was born in, 1945. I lived in that neighborhood 12 plus years. So I'm familiar with that neighborhood. And even back in then, in the mid-1950s, there was a Muslim group moved into town, Chicago. They came out of Detroit. I'll be reading something from Martin Luther King. He talks about them too, back in 1963. Yeah, he talks about them too. Elijah Muhammad, back then. He's since died, now we got Farrakhan. Nation of Islam. Why is it called the Nation of Islam? Why? Why is that? Sort of like one of those no-go zones, they're gangs that they're associated with. Nobody arrests them. They got guns and everything else. And they're violent. 3 members of the Nation of Islam assassinated Malcolm X in Harlem. They're violent. They're on the Southern Poverty Law Center list as hate groups, along with the Black Panthers. I guess Mr. Obama is associated with them too. I know he's associated with some of the old members of the Black Panthers. I've said it before and I'll say it again right now. God created Homo sapiens. Communists created blacks, the term blacks, 1965. So when you hear blacks, Black Liberation Theocracy of Jeremiah Wright, the Black Muslims, the Congressional Black Caucus, they're all adhering to the Communist Manifesto and the Communist Guidelines of the Communist Party in 1921. Those are people you all associated with here in Illinois and in Chicago. Nobody talks about that. The press has been hands off Jesse Jackson, a community organizer. Again, community organizer is a communist term. Hands off. Well over 40 years. Hands off, really, the gangs. Street gangs in Illinois in 2012 declared terrorism by the Illinois findings, legislative findings of the Illinois General Assembly. Mr. Obama associated with all of those people as a community organizer. Well, are they communist troops? They sure might be, some of them at least. But let us continue. And we'll go through this. Communist Obama, like father, like son. Please visit recapturefederalism.com, my website. I'd like to have you come over to the website, take a look at what we have of value that you may enjoy. I would only ask that you then subscribe. And if you choose not to subscribe, that's fine too. Please come and visit, see what we have. You will get a lot from my website that you will not get from the Main Street media, Hollywood, and almost anywhere else. Because the silence over there at those places is deafening. Deception in silence. John 8, verse 32. You shall know the truth, and the very truth will make you free. That's right, the truth, the word and the truth. And you won't get that from the press. No, it's the party press. Section 6 of the Guidelines of the Communist Party, 1921. It's the party press, the PR people for the Democrats and the Republican Democrat Party. Both of them are Democratic parties, by the way. Come and visit. See the truth. Hear the truth. Watch the truth. Just ask you to subscribe. I, William R. Jones, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, so help me God. General quarters, general quarters. All hands man your battle stations, up and forward to starboard, down and aft to port. Set material condition zebra throughout the ship. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Communist insurrection. General quarters, general quarters. Communist insurrection? Yes, that's right. The American ship estate is under attack. There's chaos, class warfare. People in power adhering to the Communist Manifesto and the guidelines of the Communist parties, which involves all democratic parties in the world. They are viewed by communists as being allies of the communist ideology. That's correct. And that's all criminal, by the way. We've got laws regarding that. 18 U.S.C. Chapter 115, 9 sections, including treason, misprision of treason, revolution, and insurrection. Seditious conspiracy. But by the way, not conspiracy theory. There is no such thing as a conspiracy theory. I gotta spit it out. There's no such thing as a theory of it. Something's either a conspiracy or it's not a conspiracy. There's either proof of a conspiracy or there's not enough proof of a conspiracy. It's two or more people getting together to do criminal activity. And seditious conspiracy is two or more people getting together to get involved in a seditious activity. And that's what's being done by members of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. The Republican Party is really a Democratic Party with a Republican name. It's really adhering to communism. The Democratic Party is just another name. They don't want to admit that they're communist. Progressivism is another name. It's all under the Marxist umbrella, the Engels Marxist. Atheism, both of them were atheist. We're going from 1847, when the Communist Confession of Faith was written by Frederick Engels, and they expanded off of that, Engels and Marx did, to 1848, where you have the Communist Manifesto. They're the manifesto of the Communist Party. That's the official title, by Engels and Marx, both of them atheist. It is a religion. The Communist Confession of Faith, that is a religion, okay? And I guess you can quibble about it. Maybe it's not a religion, maybe it's just a cult. But they consider themselves the supremacy of religion. They put communism and themselves in front of God. And I'm going to, in a second here, read what they intend to do and want to do and are doing. The enslavement of the American people. They're doing a good job of it. That's a violation of the 13th Amendment against slavery and involuntary servitude. And that's what we are. We're slaves to the two political communist parties. One party, two wings. They collaborate with each other along with a bunch of other people. It's all part of the communist racketeering that we have going on in this country, involving businesses and press and what have you. But let me read parts from page 26 and page 34 of the Communist Manifesto. Page 26, Communist Manifesto. Undoubtedly, it will be said religious, moral, philosophical, and judicial ideas have been modified in the course of historical development. But religion, morality, philosophy, political science, and law constantly survive this change. There are besides eternal truths such as freedom, justice, etc., that are common to all states of society. But communism abolishes eternal truth. It abolishes all religion and all morality. Instead of constituting them on a new basis, it therefore acts in contradiction to all past historical experience. Finally, they labor everywhere for the union and agreement of the democratic parties of all countries. The communists disdain to conceal their views and aims. They openly declare that their ends can be attained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. Let the ruling classes tremble at the communistic revolution. These proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win. Working men of all countries, unite. Page 34, Communist Manifesto. Do you realize what they're saying? In their documentation, do you realize what they are saying? They're going to destroy the truth and they're going to live off of lies and deception. That's the basis of the communist revolution. Distraction, deceit, deflection. A lot of them good D words like democratic. Convert the American republic principles of America. Progress to Communist Manifesto and the guidelines of the Communist parties. Destroy it. Abolish eternal truth. I guess if I want to believe, and I do have eternal truth, I'm a Christian, I guess I'm going to be abolished. I guess if I continue and refuse to stop practicing my religion, I'm going to be in prison or killed. They have associates, okay, and who do the same thing, the same principles of abolishing eternal truth, abolishing all religion and all morality. Look around the world. You have the communist cult, and then you have the Islamic cult, violence. And they go after, who they go after? They go after even the other Muslims. Peaceful Muslims. They go after them. Because they don't practice the right Islam. They are terrorists, as are the communists. They're going to make the forcibly overthrow, make other people the ruling class. All other people. If you don't agree with the communists, then you're against the communists, and they're going to make you tremble. This is one dude here. I don't tremble anymore. It's been a long time since I trembled. The last time I trembled was the first day I went to sea in a northeaster. 35-foot swells. And I told myself at that point I would never be afraid of anything the rest of my life, and that includes communist. I was already an anti-communist. I will not tremble. I may die, but I shall not perish. I have a personal covenant with God, and I will continue that personal covenant, that personal relationship with God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. I will not be abolished. Where does Mr. Obama, got the title there, Mr. Obama gets his practices that he has, where did he get them from? He gets them from his father. He gets them from his father. That's correct. And we'll read three things from the one publication from his father, the Communist. That's correct, the Communist. Like father, like son. Communist father, communist son. Since many of the African countries achieved their independence, there has been much talk about African socialism. Moreover, there has been no individual or country which has yet at any time defined this socialism, nor has there been any common ground among the leaders as to what they meant when they talked of African socialism. Where then could we look for the definition of this ism? If it is accepted that it is the leaders of a country who usually formulate and define ideologies, then the only source for this definition would be to get it from them either through their speeches, press reports, or papers through their actions. What is more important is to find means by which we can redistribute our economic gains to the benefit of all, and at the same time be able to channel some of these gains to future productions. Theoretically, there is nothing that can stop the government from taxing 100% of income so long as the people get benefits from the government commensurate with their income which is taxed. So there you have it, the one publication that Barack H. Obama has published in his lifetime. East African Journal, July 1965. It's an interesting month and year. That's the year I joined the United States Navy, and the first time I took the oath. In that publication, he's talking about the government and socialism in Kenya. They're transitioning over from colonialism through independence, and like other African countries at that time, the influence from communism is overwhelming. Angola and other African countries, Kenya, they have been influenced by the Soviet communists and the spread of communism into Africa. And of course, Barack, and you'll notice if you look at his name, that's the African spelling, Barack. This is, of course, in 1965. He's forced back into Kenya, back from the United States. The scholarships that he had at Harvard, they stopped them. They forced him to go back to Africa because they found out he was married. He had gotten married. He had more than one wife. Even Harvard couldn't overlook that. He had come over in 60, I guess it was, 59, 60, whenever. He had gotten scholarships. He had gotten money. It's interesting who gave him money to come over here. There was some American communist. Also, the Kennedy Family Foundation. That's why I went to Harvard after the University of Hawaii. Of course, there's the influence of Frank Marshall Davis out there in Hawaii, the communist influence. There was an association there, and there's, of course, Little Barack. His mother was associated with Frank Marshall Davis out there too, who was interesting about the story about that in the United States Navy later on. Even when I was over there, Frank Marshall Davis was a writer for the Honolulu Chronicle. He was also involved in the labor movement with the longshoremen out in Hawaii. The Navy task groups would stop on the way over to the Western Pacific, would stop at Pearl Harbor, and they'd have what was known as the ORI, Operation Readiness Inspection. They'd run some warfare type programs, and they'd have inspectors there from the Pentagon, Navy Department, making sure they're doing everything right. And in 1969, the ship I was on, the carrier I was on, we, along with the task force and group, stopped the ORI in Hawaii. And every one of those carrier task groups that left Hawaii and headed to the Tonkin Gulf, every one of them, when they got around Hawaii, around Midway Island, after leaving Pearl, would have a visit from Bear bombers out of Siberia, come down and fly over. What a sight that is, an air show like that. Every task group. I wonder where they got the information, the exact minutes that those task force were leaving Hawaii. Oh, yeah. Yeah. People knew about it. Longshoremen definitely did. I'm sure they let Mr. Davis know about it too. A member of the Communist Party. Now, Obama writes that one article. And of course, I didn't read the whole thing, but what's he talking about? Interesting how you can ID somebody's ideology by just listening to them, and that's true. I use that all the time. That's why how I can identify the communist. I listen to them. They won't admit that they're communism, because that's right out of the guidelines of the Communist Party. You don't admit you're a communist unless you to your advantage to do that. And of course, nowadays that's not to anybody's advantage. So to keep everything secret, they call themselves liberals. They call themselves progressives. They call themselves Democrats and Republicans. But heaven to Betsy, don't call me a communist. And of course, communist, that's as anybody's ever heard me before, I tell you, to adhere to the Communist Manifesto, you don't have to be a communist. It's strategies and tactics of totalitarianism. I call everything communism then because they do. And also it's a shorter word than totalitarianism. It's a long, big word. They have trouble spelling it and everything else. So it's just as easy to say communist. And that's somebody who's actually a communist, sympathetic to communism, a useful idiot, on and on and on. So it's just a general term that I use and other people use. Except for the press and those people who are involved in communist racketeering, they don't even know, they won't admit that they even exist. But just go to the cemeteries and look at the headstones of those who paid the ultimate price. And on their headstones it says Vietnam and Korea. And a lot of them who survived and died later. They're buried in the national cemeteries. Yeah, communists exist. Now, little Barack Jr. there, he wrote a book, didn't he? Dreams from My Father. His father was a communist. That's why I say he's a communist. That's the closest you're going to get to him admitting it. But his dreams that he has, his actions that he has, his redistribution of wealth, the communist tax system, that 100%, by the way, that I found out about that because that's in Dinesh D'Souza's movie Obama 2016. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And there you go. Like father, like son. Communist. So on the one side we have the communist criminality. Communism's built off, and Marx and Engels built it off of the observations of Niccolo Machiavelli. Machiavelli. You ever hear the word Machiavelli? Something like Machiavellian? And how dark and dreary that type of governance is? Machiavelli himself was not that type of person. He was a Roman Catholic Christian, a public administrator who observed things going on in the Republic City-States, the Republic States in Italy, and he wrote about them. He paid a heavy price for freedom of speech in writing about it. He wrote about the dark side. There's two sides to life, good and evil. We learn in Genesis, God separated the light from the darkness. And we have the Prince of Life, the Prince of Light, Jesus Christ, for us Christians. The Prince of Light, the Prince of Peace and peaceable living, the Prince of Love. And what's the opposite? Hate, lying, murder, violations of the Ten Commandments, and that's darkness. And what do you have on that side? The princes of darkness. The book that Machiavelli wrote, called Prince, the Prince. That's what they were, the princes, and they all were, most of them, princes of darkness and evil. And that's what we have with communism. There's the goodness and good government, and evil and bad government. That's communism. There's two sides, based on biblical stories and lives and living. And the American political system, which is based on the good government as specified in Romans 13. In this episode, I won't be talking about Romans 13, but I surely will be talking about it in a future episode. Probably an entire episode revolving around that. But let me go to 2 Peter 2 first. 2 Peter 2, 1. But there were also false prophets among the people, just as there will be false teachers among you. They will secretly introduce destructive heresies, even denying the sovereign Lord who bought them, bringing swift destruction on themselves. Many will follow their shameful ways and will bring the way of truth into disrepute. In their greed, these teachers will exploit you with stories they have made up. Their condemnation has long been hanging over them, and their destruction has not been sleeping. For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but sent them to hell, putting them into gloomy dungeons to be held for judgment. Then next, you have Peter, 2 Peter 2, and St. Peter talks about truth. Notice the truth in there. We have truth and lies, good and evil. And we have people with deception. They talk about the truth and say what they say is the truth, but they in effect tell lies. They violate their oaths. Guilty of violating an oath. Perjury. We have it all over our country by public officials, including Mr. Obama. Supposed to faithfully execute the office of president. Faithfully execute the Constitution. Doesn't even come close. He's violated his oath the minute he took that oath. That's a criminal act also, by the way. Next, I want to read John 15. John 15, there's 2 parts to it. 1 through 17, which I won't read today, is about love. Christ talks about love. Then verse 18, he switches over. From 18 through 27, he talks about hate. And that's what communism is all about. It's about hate. But they want to destroy Christianity. They want to destroy Jesus' love. They want to destroy Judaism. They want to destroy David, and they want to destroy Moses, and they want to destroy Abraham. They want to destroy and replace with themselves God the Father. They want to destroy Judaism. They are anti-Semitic, anti-Christian. They are a hateful bunch. And let me read John 15, 18 through 27. Pay close attention, verse 25. The Gospel according to John, chapter 15, verse 18 through 27. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. This is why the world hates you. Remember the words I spoke to you. No servant is greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. If they obeyed my teaching, they will obey yours also. They will treat you this way because of my name, for they do not know the one who sent me. If I had not come and spoken to them, they would not be guilty of sin. Now, however, they have no excuse for their sin. He who hates me hates my Father as well. If I had not done among them what no one else did, they would not be guilty of sin. But now they have seen the miracles, and yet they have hated both me and my Father. But this is to fulfill what is written in their law. They hated me without reason. When the Counselor comes, whom I will send to you from the Father, the Spirit of truth which goes out from the Father. He will testify about me. And you also must testify, for you have been with me from the beginning. And let me now read again page 26 and page 34, sections from those pages. They are key. I read them earlier. I'll read them again. They are key. Listen very closely to the words in here. These aren't my words. These are the words from the Communist Manifesto from Engels and Marx. Communist ideology. It's coming from the prophets of darkness, Engels and Marx. And we have all sorts of disciples today of those prophets. Disciples of darkness and evil. Page 26, Communist Manifesto. Undoubtedly, it will be said religious, moral, philosophical, and judicial ideas have been modified in the course of historical development. But religion, morality, philosophy, political science, and law constantly survive this change. There are besides eternal truths such as freedom, justice, etc., that are common to all states of society. But communism abolishes eternal truth. It abolishes all religion and all morality. Instead of constituting them on a new basis, it therefore acts in contradiction to all past historical experience. Finally, they labor everywhere for the union and agreement of the democratic parties of all countries. The communists disdain to conceal their views and aims. They openly declare that their ends can be attained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. Let the ruling classes tremble at the communistic revolution. These proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win. Working men of all countries, unite. Page 34, Communist Manifesto. The association between communism and the Islamic cults of violence and terror has a common ground and several common grounds. But they're both key off of religious persecution. That's correct. Religious persecution. Extreme actions, especially by the Islamic cult of violence. But the historical experience of communism over the last 150 plus years has been death and destruction and enslavement also. Vietnam, Korea, still got it going in Korea. It hasn't ended. 60 years. The two political parties here, they have their associates over there, so they don't want to stop them. They have some common ground with the North Koreans. Wow, you're sitting there listening to this and you're saying, but that's an extremist view. Yeah, it is. There is extremist good views. Some for good and some for bad. I want to say a quote right now from Barry Goldwater, Senator Barry Goldwater. He running for president in 1964. He talked about extremism. And let me give you his quote. I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. And let me remind you also that moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue. We have Goldwater and his quote. Then I have a quote, and it comes from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In my opinion, the greatest document written in the 20th century was King's letter from the Birmingham jail in April 1963. It would be 2 years prior to the subversion of Dr. King and his organization by the black nationalists. In that letter from the Birmingham jail, he wrote a lot. It's a long document, 48 paragraphs. He wrote a lot about extremism, courage, and bravery from people in the history of man. But I got a quote. You see, in 1963, he had observations. He looked around and he saw the black nationalists and the black Muslims, the Nation of Islam, and he mistakenly thought he can bring them within his organization and things would be better. But oh no, I don't believe at that time, and this is my opinion, that he realized that he was dancing with the devil. I believe he realized that later on. But I'm going to give you some quotes. I'm going to read 2 paragraphs from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King from 1963 about black nationalists and black Muslims. How poignant they are. You speak of our activity in Birmingham as extreme. At first I was rather disappointed that fellow clergymen would see my nonviolent efforts as though of an extremist. I began thinking about the fact that stand in the middle of 2 opposing forces in the Negro community. One is a force of complacency made up in part of Negroes who, as a result of long years of oppression, are so drained of self-respect and a sense of somebodyness that they have adjusted to segregation, and in part of a few middle-class Negroes because of a degree of academic and economic security and because in some ways they profit from segregation, have become insensitive to the problems of the masses. The other force is one of bitterness and hatred, and it comes to perilously close to advocating violence. It is expressed in various black nationalist groups that are springing up across the nation, the largest and best known being Elijah Muhammad's Muslim movement, nourished by Negroes' frustration over the continued existence of racial discrimination. This movement is made up of people who have lost faith in America and who have absolutely repudiated Christianity and who have concluded that the white man is an incorrigible devil. I have tried to stand between these 2 forces, saying that we need to emulate neither the do-nothingism of the complaint nor the hatred and despair of the black nationalist, for there is more excellent way of love and nonviolent protest. I am grateful to God that through the influence of the Negro Church, the way of nonviolence became an integral part of our struggle. I want to talk some more about religious persecution. Just after I returned from Vietnam, was discharged from active service 1 October 1969. And in 1970, we had a new constitution in the state of Illinois. And we ratified it in 1970. I ratified and gave consent to the present Constitution in the state of Illinois, the Republic of Illinois. And in those Bill of Rights, there's a lot of guarantees of religious freedom in different ways, and how you're supposed to be protected from discrimination. And we have the two political parties, especially the Democratic Party in Illinois, who do nothing to protect people of faith from discrimination, and do everything to conduct a class warfare of religious persecution against the people of peaceful faith and opinion in the state of Illinois. Those basic rights, Bill of Rights, and all those constitutions in the 50 states and in the federal constitution are specified bill of basic human rights. They're not the only ones we have. We used to have some that are not specified. And we all know what those rights are. But we have some that are specified. And I want to read religion of freedom, the preamble from the Illinois Constitution. And there's a section about petition and opinion. And I'm going to go ahead and read those. Listen closely to them also. How Christians throughout this country, Jews throughout this country, all the other peaceful religions, how they're all being persecuted in favor of communism and the destruction of all religions, all eternal truths, and all morality. Illinois Constitution, 1970. Bill of Rights, Section 3, Religious Freedom. The free exercise and enjoyment of religious profession and worship without discrimination shall forever be guaranteed, and no person shall be denied any civil or political right, privilege, or capacity on account of his religious opinions. But the liberty of conscience hereby secured shall not be construed to dispense with oaths or affirmations, excuse acts of licentiousness, or justify practices inconsistent with the peace or safety of the state. No person shall be required to attend or support any ministry or place of worship without his consent, nor shall any preference be given by law to any religious denomination or mode of worship. Source, Illinois Constitution. The Constitution of the State of Illinois, 1970. Preamble. We, the people of the State of Illinois, grateful to Almighty God for the civil, political, and religious liberty which He has permitted us to enjoy, and seeking His blessing upon our endeavors in order to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of the people, maintain a representative and orderly government, eliminate poverty and inequality, assure legal, social, and economic justice, provide opportunity for the fullest development of the individual, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, and secure the blessings of freedom and liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the state of Illinois. The Illinois Constitution, 1970. Bill of Rights, Section 5. The right to assemble and petition. The people have the right to assemble in a peaceable manner, to consult for the common good, to make known their opinions to their representatives, and to apply for redress of grievances. As I've looked at this over the last 50 years, I often wonder, why are people communists? Why do they adhere to Communist Manifesto? Why do they allow themselves to be forced to submit to evil and a satanic political ideology and theology? Why do we do that? Well, the answer is in the Bible. The answer is in the Bible. It's in Luke, the Gospel according to Luke. And I'm going to read that. Pay close attention to the 7 spirits. That's right, the 7 deadly sins. And that's what communism is all about. Destruction of religion and morality. It's an immoral ideology and theology. Yeah, I'll read Luke 11. Then we'll come back and we'll talk to Obama's associations with different peeps and groups. Luke 11, verse 21-22. When a strong man, fully armed, guards his own house, his possessions are safe. But when someone stronger attacks and overpowers him, he takes away the armor in which the man trusted and divides his plunder. Luke 11, 24-26. When an impure spirit comes out of a person, it goes through arid places seeking rest and does not find it. Then it says, I will return to the house I left. When it arrives, it finds the house swept clean and put in order. Then it goes and takes 7 other spirits more wicked than itself, and they go in and live there. And the final condition of that person is worse than the first. And Mr. Obama Jr. has all sorts of association with different people over his life. A lot of the stuff we can't find out about because he hides it all. Like a little cockroach running around the darkness. You know, when Kennedy got elected and ran for president, we heard all about his family, the good, bad, and the ugly. It was all open to everybody. We knew about it. Mr. Obama runs for the Senate, U.S. Senate, runs for president. Everything's hidden, everything in the background. Everything is hidden. In 2004, he runs Democrat primary for U.S. Senate. And it doesn't look good for him. Not in the primary, but the Republican opponent, Jack Ryan. And I'm going to show you how you have the party press and how they work and worked at that time involved in a conspiracy. We have a conspiracy between members of the Chicago media, a corrupt judge in California, and Obama's campaign committee in Chicago. And the head of that committee, and you can guess who that is. The press that was involved was the WLS TV, the ABC station in Chicago, and the Chicago Tribune. Directly involved is the editorial board, I guess. I believe at the time there was Clarence Page was on the editorial board. I believe he's still there. We all know who he's associated with in the south side of Chicago and the west side of Chicago. Yeah, all those associations. Anyway, the Chicago Tribune and WLS TV went out to, under the disguise of freedom of the press, and I don't know if ABC was involved or not, but WLS TV at the time, I think they still are, but at the time they were part of the umbrella of Disney. Jack Ryan had gotten a divorce. At the time, I guess he had been living out there in California, and his wife was an actress. And I'm not going to go in too deep in this because on their personal side, because they were destroyed, especially Jack Ryan. What the communists do very well are character assassinations and personal political character assassinations of people. They did it to Joe McCarthy in the 50s. And they did it to Jack Ryan because Jack Ryan was going to win. He's way ahead in the polls. He was running in the Republican primary. And they decided that they were going to get him. But the campaign committee did. Of course, they're not going to do it direct. They got some media buddies and went out there. Because you see, the Ryans and their divorce had everything sealed because it was kind of ugly. But oh no, the press wouldn't allow that. They didn't do it to anybody else, but they do it at the request of the Democratic campaign committee for Mr. Obama. And they found themselves a crooked judge out there who would go along and unseal the case. And they assassinated, political character assassination of Mr. Ryan and got him out of the way. He steps down in the Republican Party in Illinois. They wanted to have Mike Ditka, the coach, run for senator. Oh, Mike Ditka, he's too smart for that. He could see that a mile away because they'd rip him apart too. They would character assassinate that man also. And who did they get? They got a black man. They'd run up a black man against Obama. Alan Keyes. Knew he wasn't going to win, but they put him up there anyway. What a circus. And then you got the tyrant. That's how he got into the Senate. It was all set up. Party press. That's right out of the guidelines of the Communist Party's 1921. So there you have it. Darkness in the press, darkness in politics, darkness in life. And we all have a choice. And who do you choose? The light side, be enlightened, or you choose darkness? For me, I'll leave this episode with the reading of a Lutheran hymn, and it's Where I Stand. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. When darkness veils his lovely face, I rest on his unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds within the veil. On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. His oath, his covenant, and blood support me in the whelming flood. When every earthly prop gives way, he then is all my hope and stay. On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. When he shall come with trumpet sound, O may I then in him be found, clothed in his righteousness alone, faultless to stand before the throne. On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand.